All right, thank you everyone that's joined the webinar. We'll wait just about 30 seconds to give everyone some time to jump in before we get started. But thanks for those of you who joined on time. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Just want to make sure we have enough time to get through all of the content today. And those of you that joined in a little late can go ahead and I'm just going to check on the Q&A chat. So yes, there was already a question. Just want a couple housekeeping items. This webinar is recorded. We will share out the recording afterwards. So if you can't make the whole webinar, we'll be able to send that recording. So today's webinar is called Next Level Services to Grow Your Firm. This webinar is co-hosted by both Practice Ignition and Clockwork. So got to know the Clockwork team over about the last year and a half and really impressed with both the product and their team and how they're helping accounting firms ultimately provide better advice to small business clients. So we've really found that Practice Ignition and Clockwork can align with a really good message to go to market. So today's webinar is really going to be around offering higher value services to your clients to ultimately help you grow your firm. So what we want to do today is kind of help explain some different service offerings that you might not already be offering today, and then how you can go about and actually deliver those to your clients. So first, Fady's going to talk through just some steps on growing your firm and then also helping your clients grow. We'll then get into what are those actual next level services look like and how do you present and sell them. And then looking at some applications out there, you know, in the Xero and QuickBooks marketplaces that can really help you deliver on these services to your small business clients. So today, forgot to mention, but my name is Ryan Embree and I'm from Practice Ignition. So I head up our partnerships team here in North America and really excited to have Fady of Clockwork on as well. So Fady's got a really interesting story. He's, which I'll let him explain a bit later on, but he's basically seen this from both angles. So working in small business and then actually working as an advisor to small businesses, and then realized the gap in the market and decided to start Clockwork. So Fady, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and Clockwork before we get started?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Ryan. So as Ryan said, I'm Fady Hawatmeh and I'm the founder and CEO of Clockwork. Clockwork's been something I've been working on for the better part of 5 years now. It has been essentially evolved out of my outsourced CFO, COO consulting firm. And so as Ryan said, definitely saw the gap. We were offering services for small businesses with financial projections, financial modeling, cash flow forecasting, realized that there was no tool in the market that actually did it good enough and automated things well enough. And so Clockwork was born out of that firm, and we've been around for several years now and partner with top 100 regional CPA firms and allow them to offer next level services and more advisory services for their clients.
Great, thanks for that. So yeah, I guess kind of the first thing we're going to get into is really looking at growth in your firm. And Fady's actually has this experience running his own firm. So gonna pass back over to him to kind of talk through this first part here.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. And so, you know, obviously when you're looking at growing your firm, how much can you handle? How much can you take on in terms of hiring new clients? Bringing on new clients and hiring new staff. So, you know, it's not always easy to grow your firm to, you know, from 25 clients to 50 clients. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're just going to be making double the money. Usually when you're scaling, especially in the smaller stages of your firm, your margins are going to go down pretty significantly because you have to bring on new people, ramp them up, figure out what their capacity is. You know, when I was at my firm, I could take on probably 20 clients myself, 15 to 20 clients. And when I started bringing on additional people, their, you know, bandwidth was kind of 10 to 12. And so when they started getting ramped up, they could move up a little bit, but, you know, that took time. That, you know, I ran my firm for about 3 years. And so each person took a different utilization rate, I guess you could say, when I brought them on and kind of ramped them up into into Clockwork. So understanding what your growth is, growth, everyone wants to grow. Obviously, every company wants to grow, every firm wants to grow. But what does that mean? What does that mean for your company? You really do have to be honest with yourself and honest with your team, and understand how big can you grow with your current staff, and how many more people can you bring on. It's great if you sign all these clients, but it's not great if you don't have these staff to support them, especially when you start adding those next level services like cash flow forecasting and financial projections, and the overall billings and more advisory services, because as we all know, taxes and bookkeeping and those kinds of things have sort of become a commodity. And so it really is understanding what you can provide, how you can provide it, and how you can really become that next level service provider to all of your clients and all your prospective clients. Because I'm sure, as you guys have all experienced, when you start growing and you start signing on new clients, word of mouth spreads pretty quickly and you get a lot more introductions. So it's kind of that snowball effect of growth, which is phenomenal if you can handle it. And so being able to balance the two is extremely important when you're even just in the mindset or framing what your growth, what the growth of your firm is going to look like, and how you want that growth of your firm to play out over the next year, 2 years, 3 years, and where you want to solidify yourself in that market with your service offering. And so the most important thing, and what Ryan and I are going to be touching on today, especially, is how technology is going to aid you to do that. Doing financial projections, I used to partner with CPA firms all the time. That's how I grew my outsourced CFO firm, because CPA firms, they all knew that they needed to offer these solutions. They knew that their clients were asking for cash flow forecasting, financial projections, metrics, scenario planning, all the what if analysis that goes into running a business. And so I was essentially partnering with these CPA firms to do all that work for them and for their clients, and work with the CPAs and work with the clients to get them understanding what their models look like, how to play with them, how to really play these what if scenarios. And Clockwork has essentially empowered all the CPA firms that we partner with now, where they don't need to pay someone like me, or they don't need to partner with someone and pay top dollar and look elsewhere to provide a service that all their clients are asking for. So Clockwork, is that tool, and that's why I founded it. That's why Clockwork exists. It's to empower small businesses and advisors in the same. So now use those collaborative tools, and obviously Ryan will touch on how Practice Ignition changes the way that the firms are run, but Clockwork changes the way your services are offered, and then it changes the way your pitches go with your prospective clients, and then it closes deals quicker, it gets people more engaged, and it becomes a stickier solution when you have everything rolled up into technology. Because one thing that will always close a deal is ease of pain, right? If you're going to make people's lives easier, that's always a selling point. And so if you can do that pretty much right out the gate, then it saves your time, makes those conversations a lot more productive, and lets you really change the way that you're operating your firm and operating for your clients.
Awesome. Yeah, I think the next thing we want to talk about is, how you go about actually helping the clients grow their own business. We talked about, wanting to grow your firm, bring on more clients, offer new services. But Fady, maybe from your experiences, when you are actually sitting down, you've got the financials of a small business, how do you go about actually tackling that growth question for them within their own business? And how do you provide that advice?
Yeah. And so, it really is all about changing the conversation from talking about an Excel sheet or spreadsheet or Google Sheets or whatever you're using, to actually talking about the levers that you can change with your company, and the levers that you have to adjust, and all the different things that you can do for your company itself. And so, when it comes to really having those conversations, it drove me nuts when I would share things with my clients, and they'll come back and forth, and we'll go back and forth probably 10, 15 times just on the Excel sheet. Like, what is this sheet? Where is this sheet coming from? Where are these numbers coming from? What is this? It's like, why are we talking about an Excel sheet? Let's talk about the strategy behind everything and how we're growing everything. And so after, 2-3 hours of kind of back and forth over how to understand the spreadsheet, then it was, okay, this looks good. Let's, change this, or let's do this, or what if we did this? And so, really offering the strategic level advice, and really, an advisory is always such an overused term. Everyone loves to say we offer advisory services, or we want to be an advisor to firms or to small businesses. But what does that really mean? Are you actually advising the company on how to move forward and how to grow and strategically plan, from capital planning to scenarios, to hiring, to firing, to HR, to really growth across the board? Just like we were talking at the beginning, as your firm needs to understand what your growth limits are, so do your clients. And so having them have a full understanding of what they're doing and what they're getting into, then giving them the tools to go and do it themselves. Because, it kind of drove me a little crazy, when you talk about empowering our clients to run their business. I'd get phone calls all the time from my clients, and they're like, hey, what if we went into this market? Or what if we offered this new product or a new service? Or what if we hired this person, or went into, got a new office space, or whatever? I mean, a million different what if questions they could ask. And then I'll take a couple hours and I'll build a model and send it to them. And they're like, hey, this looks great, but what if we did this, this, this? And it's like, well, I wish you told me the full picture right off the bat, and then we could have, kind of walked through it. So instead of all this back and forth, empower your clients to be able to do this stuff by themselves, and on their own. So then your conversations aren't, can you build me a model that does this? It'll be, hey, I built this and I played around with this. What are these decisions doing to our bottom line? Do you think this is sustainable? Do you think it's realistic? How can we hit that? And, basically walk through how their company can change versus what do the numbers look like if we decide to do that. And then that's how you look forward to the strategic level advice that makes you irreplaceable. Because like we said, you don't want to talk to your clients once a year whenever you're getting ready for their taxes. And as we all know, when you need something from your clients, they take their sweet time to give us an answer, to give us what we need. But when they need something, they need it immediately. And if you don't have it within, an hour, a day, they're blowing you up, and they're constantly reaching out to you. So give them the tools to let them, because they're probably not going to be logging into Xero or QuickBooks Online, and if they do, they're probably going to mess things up that we don't want them to mess up. And so give them the tools to let them play with their business and their decisions, and see how their things are really affecting the growth, and really plan ahead to manage their business.
Yeah, I guess, how would you position yourself too? Because I think, when a small business thinks about these growth questions, how did you make sure that you were the one that they came to for this advice, and you knew that you could actually give them those answers? So I think often a lot of small businesses don't have that resource, and then if they actually look to you as that, how did you position yourself in that way?
Yeah, it's kind of funny, because when I was first engaging with all my clients, they were these transactional kind of deals, right? They would come and say, hey, I'm raising money. I need to build out 5-year projections and a cash flow forecast. I don't know how to do it. Can you do it? They'll send me the financials. I'll build it, and then kind of go from there. But then they kept coming back with bigger and better questions. So it would always start with, we need to raise money. How does this look? But then with that tool that I give them a model, and do the whole nine. But there's a lot more guidance that I would add on top of it. I wouldn't allow it to just be a transactional thing. They pay their fee for the financial model or whatever it was, but I offer them, like, hey, looking at your finances, looking at these decisions you're making, looking at what you think your growth is going to be, these are the areas that I would concentrate on, and these are the things that I would kind of change. And it changed the conversation with my clients and my prospective clients from a transactional nature to, hey, this is how I run my business, and this is how I want to partner with you to run your business. So it gets out of that, like that first line says, be more than just their tax person. Taxes are very transactional. It's give me your reports, let me go back, crunch the numbers, and then you're done. But being that repeat source for these companies, for your clients, to always come back to them being their person. You know, everyone needs to be that person. When people say I have a guy for that, or I have a woman for that, like, they have to be very, very synonymous. Same with offering these services. So don't be afraid to offer those services, because they'll come back in spades.
So yeah, I think, we've kind of used this as a tagline for the webinar, and kind of see it throughout of kind of these next level services. So perhaps for those on the line, maybe they're just running a bookkeeping business. Maybe they have a bunch of tax clients, and they haven't really kind of thought about these other services or where to start. Maybe kind of touch on where you'd recommend those starting that aren't offering these other services. What are some examples of those services, and ultimately, how can they help deliver them?
Yeah, so if you are only doing bookkeeping, or you are only doing month-end close and tax filing and that kind of stuff, have a conversation with your clients. Have a very very frank conversation with your clients, and then with your prospective clients, of like, if I offered these services, would you use them? And then I will offer these, and these are the prices I will have. Do you use anyone else for these services? Because every single company needs forecasting. Every single company needs bookkeeping. Every single company needs projections. Every single company needs, to manage their contracts and their billings and all that kind of stuff. So it's essentially finding out what they're doing right now. Are they struggling in Excel? A lot of my clients, they were spending 10 hours a week, literally 25% of their, kind of quote unquote 25% of their time, managing an Excel sheet, trying to fumble through all these things to build projections and all this kinds of stuff. So it was literally just asking them, like, how are you doing this now? Let's change that. Let's make it more efficient. Let's make it more of a process that can be scaled, and that you can offer much more, like I said, those advisory solutions, because, taxes, bookkeeping, all those things, like again, like I said, are a commodity. And so just having those conversations, you'll be surprised how many of your clients are going to be extremely frank with you and say, oh, I'm struggling with this, and I've been struggling with it for a while. A lot of my clients, they were super, super happy and excited when I said that I offered the projections, the forecasting, plus the metrics, plus the scenarios and all this kinds of stuff. And they were like, oh my gosh, I had no idea you did that. Can you please do this? And then referrals came flying out of nowhere, because businesses and small businesses, they all talk to each other. It's a very tight-knit community, just as the accounting world is. So having those conversations with your clients, with your prospective clients, and understanding where they are at, and then being confident to offer those solutions and find better ways. I mean, the reason I founded Clockwork was to have that better way for accounting firms and for other firms to offer forecasting, modeling, scenario planning, all these other high demand solutions, without having to go pay someone a ton of money or partner with someone and give away a bunch of your margin or anything like that. So it's a lot more just have that conversation and be ready to offer those tools.
Yeah, in terms of, prerequisites in order to offer these services, is this something you think, who from, perhaps it's, someone's running a team of 5, should they be the one offering their services? Is this something they can enable their team to offer? And then in terms of technology, I guess, is there kind of like prerequisites to offer these services? Say your clients aren't running their businesses on online accounting software. What kind of needs to be in place as almost like that precursor to the offering?
Yeah, so obviously I'll speak to Clockwork. Clockwork integrates with QuickBooks Online and Xero. So obviously, to be able to offer that, they have to be on a cloud computing solution, because QuickBooks Desktop actually doesn't support any API integrations anymore. So having your clients on something that's a little more forward thinking, and being a little more forward thinking, I guess that's the very first prerequisite of offering these solutions, is being a forward thinking firm and having forward thinking clients. Because one of the worst things that you could do is get all ramped up and have everything kind of situated. But if your clients are like, no, I want to use QuickBooks Desktop because we've been on it for 20 years and that's just what we do and how we are, that's never really going to lend itself to allowing you to offer those next level services for those clients. And so understanding, kind of the really the back end solution for your clients and for your firm, and understanding your clients. Obviously, if they're growing, 2% every year, like Clockwork, no pun intended, they probably don't need any kind of very elaborate tools, and they're probably not asking you for financial modeling and forecasting. They don't need to know what their cash situation is going to look like in a year or 2 months or 3 months. And so understanding your clients, and then, really understanding what you want to do in terms of those services. If your expertise is not modeling or forecasting or anything like that, partner with tools like Clockwork or Practice Ignition and understand, what that allows you, what that empowers you to do, and actually offer those solutions and pass on those efficiencies to your clients. Because Practice Ignition, Clockwork, none of it, we don't exist other than to make CPA firms and small business lives easier. And so, it's understanding that holistic view of it and really offering it at that high level.
So yeah, I kind of want to touch on something that we got to a bit before this, is around kind of the picking kind of the tools and how to think about what to pick. So I think it's really important, especially if you are an accounting bookkeeping firm, to really define the technology stack that you're working with. And I think instead of being overwhelmed that there's 700 apps out there and how do I pick which one, try to think about what are the practice apps. So what are the apps that you need to run your business for you and your team? And then think about the client apps. So these are going to be applications that you're actually referring to your clients and then helping them work with to run their business. So in terms of practice apps, I think it's really important to think about connected workflows. So if you think about what you need to do in your practices, you need to ultimately bring on clients. So you have to have some sort of sales conversation. So you might think about a CRM. You need to initiate that initial contract. So something like Practice Ignition can help you actually get that out the door and signed on. From there, then you have to think about a workflow tool. So where are you actually managing this work? How do you and your team know what you're doing? Perhaps you want to track time on those jobs. So you might need to think about a time tracking solution. So yeah, really thinking, at least in those initial ones, and then you can get into communications too. So what are you using to communicate with your staff and your clients? Using email, using Slack. But all those different applications you might use in your practice, is how can you make sure that they're connected or integrated? So you're not entering data in two different systems, or having to copy and paste this out of that and put it in there. So using an application like Zapier can be really helpful, or finding applications that do have direct connections. In terms of client apps, so the apps that you would refer to your clients, I think it's really important to think about the data flows. So if you're using QuickBooks Online, how first are you getting the data into QuickBooks Online? Are your clients using something like a receipt bank or a HubDoc to make sure all their bills and invoices get properly in, so we can have up-to-date books? And then we think about that kind of next level, perhaps something like a Clockwork to actually look at that forecasting. So how is that data getting into the accounting system, and how are we able to push it out to actually help that client build a forecast in their business? But again, if we get stuck at that initial stage of we can't get a bank feed into QBO, we can't get any of the invoices or bills into QuickBooks, down the road when you look to go build a forecast, you're really not you're not gonna have any good data to work with and actually help that business. So it's important to think about that from end to end, and what is that service you're actually trying to deliver at the end of the road. So with Practice Ignition, I think you really think about that scalable onboarding process. So every time you have a new client, how can we make that as easy as possible, and it's not going to be an administrative nightmare. And I think when you're thinking about growth too, I think often people think about the growth as in new clients and having to spend all this money and effort to go find out new clients. But my guess is most of you on the webinar today already have some clients, maybe have a lot of clients. So I think that the whole notion of growing within your existing client base, selling services to your clients that they don't have, or they might not even know they need. What Fady was getting at earlier is they don't even know that they need it. They don't even know that you offer it. You can grow your business tremendously without bringing on a single new client. Fady, do you have any other kind of thoughts on that, on growth from existing client base, or how you kind of target those clients that might need these services?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit it kind of nail on the head. Is you don't necessarily, growth doesn't necessarily mean going out and doing a whole business development reach. There really is a lot of potential that you have in your existing client base that you can do, your organic growth just with your own firm, with your own clients, and really just letting them know, hey, we're not just a tax person, or we're not just bookkeeping or anything like that. The growth doesn't mean you have to go and spend a ton of hours doing content marketing or dollars on digital ads, or doing all these other kind of extraneous things. That could literally just be emailing your existing clients and saying, hey, we offer this now. Is this something you would want to be involved in, or want to have a discussion on? So it's a lot easier, or I won't say easier, it's a lot more approachable than most people think.
Awesome. So the next thing we want to touch on, and I think this is the part that often some people can get scared about or not feel comfortable with, is ultimately kind of selling these services, demanding a higher price point than you may have in the past, and really having the confidence to do that. I've got a story, but maybe Fady, quickly from your end, anything that you found worked really well when you were running your firm in terms of selling that value, being able to demand a higher fee from your clients, and ultimately getting them to agree to that and getting them signed on. Any kind of tips or tricks that you found kind of helped you gain your confidence in that as well?
Yeah, I mean, I forgot who said it, but they said you're compensated based on the problems that you solve. So if you go in there and you say, all we do is your bookkeeping, and not discounting bookkeeping or any of those solutions for business owners, they know they need to keep their books clean, but they don't know what it really kind of dovetails into unless the IRS, kind of comes knocking at their door and they're like, oh shoot, I probably needed to do this. But if you go and tell them, what's really keeping you up at night, and then address those pain points and address these high level issues, like, can I afford to hire someone? Can I afford to move into a new market? Are we making enough money? One thing that absolutely drove me nuts is I love these companies that were like, we're making $20 million a year. It's like, okay, are you actually making 20 million? That sounds great on a surface level, but then you start digging into their things, and 18 million comes from one customer, one client, and it costs them 21 million to make that 18 million from them. So the business doesn't look as good. And then when you start rationalizing those things and talking through those things and letting your clients know, hey, that's not okay. That's not a solution for growing your business. That's not how we're going to grow this business to be profitable. And letting people know that, everything isn't hunky dory. Your numbers, give them that next layer of what their numbers mean. It's one thing to kind of send them a packet that they're probably not even going to open anyways, a reporting package that, high level, these are the numbers. Okay, great. But what do they mean? Have that insight to kind of take it one step further. And it may cost you an extra 15, 20 minutes to do that, but it'll come back pretty heavily just by solving those problems that your clients have that they don't even think you see.
Nice. Yeah, kind of get the story I was going to tell kind of follows nicely on that. So our founder, Practice Ignition, Guy Pearson, before Practice Ignition, he actually still runs an accounting firm in Australia. And I think he did something unique in his sales process of actually providing a lot of value in that initial sales meeting. So that, might have taken him an extra 30 minutes to an hour, maybe more before the meeting. But once he went in that meeting, he knew he was going to be able to close them. So what did he actually do to make that value? So first thing he would do is he's asked for access to their accounting system, even if it was desktop. He'd then go ahead and actually manually do the conversion himself, even if it's just getting ending balances in, to get an accurate picture of their books into Xero. He'd then set up a bank feed so they understood how Xero worked. The next step that he would do then is plug it into a reporting solution so they can actually see their numbers. He'd look at their KPIs so how they're tracking towards industry benchmarks. And then he'd kind of put that all on a few screens. So they'd come into his office, and he basically was able to paint a picture of where they needed to go and how they were able to get there. So that's just kind of one example of how you can look to provide some initial value within that first sales conversation. Cool. So what we do want to talk about next is some of the applications that can be used in this process, and how they actually look and work. So often when we do these webinars, the first question people ask is, how does the application actually work? So we want to give some time to give some quick demos here, so you understand how both Practice Ignition and Clockwork work. Any points on that stuff before I get into the demo, Fady?
No, I'm good.
All right. Cool. Just gonna switch my screens up quickly. All right, so just in Practice Ignition first. So as I mentioned before, Practice Ignition would be that initial place that you would start this engagement with your client. So let's say we need to bring on a new client and kind of sell our service to them. Everything would then start in Practice Ignition. And then we think kind of once we've got that client signed on, then it's okay, what other applications are going to be used in the mix for us to actually help deliver those services? So actually Practice Ignition would be a lot of what happens before they actually do become a customer. So everything starts with a proposal. So just want to show you how quick and easy it is to bring on a client using Practice Ignition. So what I'd do here is just add in a client. So I'd pull that from a client list if that already exists. I'd lay out the start and end dates of the engagement. And again, this is something you can do while you're having that conversation with the client. So let's say we've had that meeting, we're ready to get them on board. Just go ahead and add in the services here. So perhaps they're getting our monthly accounting services that come with forecasting. We then set that price for that. Let's say we want to get them under a recurring fee. So for those of you switching to more of a monthly fixed fee model, Practice Ignition can really help facilitate that. Perhaps we want to add in, the accounting software subscriptions. Maybe we want to pass those fees along to our clients and the other applications too. I think that's something people often don't realize is that you're wearing these costs of these applications. You actually can go back and charge those off to your clients. And perhaps we do want to do a training and setup. So before any of this work, it's really going to take us a lot of time to get in and set up their systems. We want to bill for that up front. So in this case, I've got a few recurring service fees and then a fee up front. If you did want to bill by the hour or on completion, you could also do that too. We act as a payment processor, so we can collect off both ACH and credit card. So once that's ready to go, then we'd hit send. That sends off to our client, and this is what they would interact with. So they get an email. This is branded towards the firm. In this case, it's my accounting firm, Kickin' Assets Accounting Services. So our clients, it's really gonna be a good first impression to our clients. So they'd see some more information about us as a firm, really nice professional branded look. See a breakdown of those services that we actually are going to offer. So they can kind of understand in a few bullet points instead of sending off an 18-page engagement letter with a bunch of legal jargon. They actually know what you're going to be providing to them. They know that payment schedule. So in this case, it's going to be $700 up front and then $850 recurring every month. We'll capture their payment information off either ACH or credit card here. And you only have to do this once, and then the payments will be automated moving forward. So you don't have to worry about chasing your clients for fees. And when you're having your conversations with your clients, it's going to be about that value in their business. It's not going to be, hey, can you pay off that last invoice? It's 2 months late at this point. And then lastly, you get the digital signature on the engagement letter. So the client will see that clear breakdown and digitally sign and accept at the bottom. So that's kind of where Practice Ignition lives in that life cycle of you and your clients, is really getting them onboarded, setting the terms and payments. I'm going to hand it over to Fady now to talk a bit more how Clockwork will work, and how you kind of introduce Clockwork to your clients. Make you the presenter. All right, you should be able to share now.
Perfect. Okay. So, this is our website. We do offer a free 14-day trial. One thing that I would recommend all of you go check out is our partners page. So with Clockwork, we do offer a actual program for your firm. And so with the Clockwork Champions program, we actually allow discounts of 15 to 50% off, depending on how many clients you have. So I would encourage you all to reach out if you want to talk more about that, but you can also read some more on the website itself. So jumping into the product, when you log in, we do have Google integration. Obviously, we have regular email and password. This is a screen that you guys will all be familiar with. And so with all of your clients, if you have 20, 30, 50, 150, they'll all be listed here. And so you actually have your parent account, just like in QBO, just like in Xero. You can actually add a new account right here. It takes less than 30 seconds to create an account. Essentially, all you do is add in your QBO or Xero login credentials, allow Clockwork to actually speak to the software, and then that's it. The backend AI will take about 8 to 10 minutes to get everything set up, and then whenever you are set up, you get launched into your custom created Clockwork account. So all of this will literally look identical to what your account will look like the second you integrate. So starting kind of at the very top, your Clockwork score is a way of gamifying small business finance. So we actually reward you for doing well financially. So your Clockwork score is an A+ score, B+ score, or C+ score. And so it's dependent on how your EBITDA is trending, how your cash flow is trending, and then how you're performing to your plan. And so if you have an A+ score for 3 months straight, we actually give you 10% off your next month. And if you have an A+ score for 6 months straight, we give you your next month free. And so the coolest thing with that is actually gets people more engaged and more dedicated to, and get rewards for performing well with your company. And so over here, we actually have an audit log built into Clockwork, because one thing that drove me crazy with my clients is when I would take all this time and build them a model or Excel spreadsheet or whatever it may be, send it over to them, and they'll send it back to me and say, hey, these numbers don't look right, or this row doesn't look right, or this doesn't look right, or, and then I have to go and hunt and peck, and it's, they changed the number, they deleted a number, they broke the link, whatever it may be. So now in Clockwork, you actually have a full audit log. And so it'll capture who did what they did, and when they did it. So there's no more confusion, pointing fingers, or any issues like that. And then down here, this is your interactive graph of your financial model. So as you see, when you scroll right or left, the numbers above will change respective to that month. And the shaded areas are always going to show a rolling 12 months of your actuals. And then the dotted lines are your forecast. And so when you integrate, your baseline forecast that Clockwork will actually build for you is based on what industry you're in, your historical trends, your seasonality, how big your company is, employee size, revenue size, a few other factors like that. And it actually builds out your 5-year financial projections for you the second you integrate. So you'll actually be able to filter all the way out for a full 5 years, 2 years, whatever it may be, for you to really track your growth. And if you don't want to see certain things, you can just deselect them from the chart, from the grid above. So you can really get pretty granular just from a graphical representation of your numbers. And down here is how your cash flow is going to look. So, similar to above, it's always going to be showing a rolling 13 weeks of actuals back here. And it's going to show cash in, cash out, actual versus forecast. And you can actually filter all the way out for a full 65 weeks. And you'll be able to see what your baseline, what your bank balance is, and then what your week ending balances are, comparing actual versus your forecast. And then jumping into the financial model, which is really the true, obviously the workhorse behind Clockwork, where everything is being custom built for your company. We don't have templates in the back end. So the second you integrate, all of these accounts are going to be your accounts, your gross revenue. It's going to be your chart of accounts that pulls into the financial model. And so all of these actuals will actually be from your clients, from your actual accounts. And over here, you can actually build out all of your forecasts based on what the backend AI is calculating. It'll be in just the white cells. All these white cells will represent what the actual baseline forecast is. And then all these green shaded cells represent your assumptions. So one of the coolest things about Clockwork is you can actually customize the assumptions behind your numbers. So you can do basic assumptions or advanced assumptions. So basic assumptions will do some one-time monthly thing, or if it's a flat growth rate, say 5% for every month, every quarter, every year, whatever you want to see fit. you put it in there, and you can actually add descriptions for each assumption. And so just like in Excel or Google Sheets, you do your comments on the cells, and same with the advanced assumptions, where you can actually take that one step further. So here you can do your time range, and you can do percent of other accounts in Clockwork. So like for cost of goods sold, it's 5% of your total revenue. You can literally type in 5% total revenue, and it'll tie those two accounts together. And so whenever you change any assumptions going forward, it'll be everything growing in sync. And these are all, again, your chart of accounts. So it'll show exactly what your accounts are representing there. And you can also do quantities. So if you have multiple tier discounts, if you're a subscription company, if you have multiple products, if you're selling, you know, physical products, like say t-shirts are $10 and hoodies are $45. Here you'll type in, you know, however many t-shirts you think you're going to sell, and you can actually add in as many of these advanced assumptions as you want. And so you can build them all out every month, every quarter, every year. You can do quantity up here, you can do percent of account here. So your advanced assumptions really lets you get pretty granular with your assumptions, and you can build as many of these out. You can actually add new lines in your gross revenue, in your COGS, in your operating expenses, all of the above, and be able to build these assumptions. So if you want to add a new row, you literally just hit add new, you type in what you want to forecast out. If I can spell ignition, you hit enter, and everything will automatically recalculate for you. So the second you add any assumptions, it'll recalculate the entire table all the way down to your bottom line, exactly what that decision is doing for your business. So that feeds directly into your cash flow. Our cash flow is actually looking at your AR, your AP, plus everything you have in the projections. So they're tied one for one. And so you can filter, or you can see all the way out for the next 65 weeks what your cash in, cash out looks like. Your metrics actually, you know, one thing that's very special about Clockwork is I wanted to have it not just be an AI tool, but a business intelligence tool as well. And so we're actually building out our metrics side to capture a lot more of that usable data that you can take a snapshot and be like, okay, this is exactly where we're going. So here you have a waterfall chart of your performance summary, your margin by account size, that example that I said of a, you know, client saying they're a $20 million company, but 18 million came from one customer. This chart is what captures that information. So we're pulling transactional level data into Clockwork. We're not just pulling reports like other tools that will just kind of show you what the numbers are. We're actually pulling and building everything ourselves, so we can do a lot more analysis on those numbers. Here's your gross margin over time, debt to equity ratio, current ratio, some liquidity ratios, and we're growing this out pretty consistently. So here you can filter on monthly, quarterly, or annually on your metrics, and then building scenarios. So we have unlimited scenarios in Clockwork, so you can literally build as many financial models as you want. So here you can name the scenario right there. You hit start to write scenario, and you can literally build as many of these for as many of these accounts as you want. So like on the financial model, you can build out your assumptions per line. Now you can do it for as many revenue sources with your basic assumptions or advanced assumptions across the board. And it's not just for revenue. You could do it for cost of goods sold. You could do it for operating expenses. And again, these are all your accounts. These are all exactly what your chart of accounts has. And you can literally build on as many of these as you want, add your assumptions, fill everything else out. You hit next step, but it'll actually build a summary of what your baseline forecast is and your scenario forecast. And you can, you know, you'll have a chart very similar to the dashboard where you can select or deselect some things here. If you want to compare and contrast, you can drag and actually pinch into certain months to see exactly what that means. But the coolest thing is when you hit finish, it'll actually build you a financial model with that scenario. So you'll have 3 different columns: actuals, forecast, and scenarios. So you'll be able to run your variance analyses across the board on what your scenario is doing against your baseline forecast. And again, here, you know, and I don't think I touched this in the beginning, is you can actually deselect these filters up here. So you'll have a quarterly view of of your numbers, you'll have a quarterly view, a monthly view, or an annual view with your scenarios. And so when you actually, I completely just messed it up. And so when you actually, deselect monthly, deselect quarterly, you can have an annual view, and you can collapse or expand all these headers and have a truncated view of your P&L. And as you see, it does it pretty immediately. And so then you can actually, if you want to update anything, you can select on scenarios. And so these are all just the random scenarios that I've built. And so you can select on any of these scenarios and they'll populate. And so not only is your financial model updating every hour, all of your scenarios are too. So you'll be able to track everything in as real time as possible. And when you look at your settings, so here you can quickly switch accounts. But when you go to your settings, here you can do unlimited users. Not only do we have unlimited scenarios, we have unlimited users. So with 3 different permissions levels, admin, employee lets you do all the projections. View only is obviously view only for banks, insurance companies, anything like that, of that sort that want to see everything. But you can literally add as many users as you want all at once. They get an email that says, hey, Ryan invited you to collaborate on Clockwork. They create their password and then they're in. And so here, some companies don't want to filter or don't want to forecast for a full 5 years, so you can limit that. Some companies don't want to forecast for a full year. You can limit that. This will actually show you when it was last synced with the account that you have. You can disconnect it here. If you don't want to wait until the next time the auto sync comes through, you can just literally hit sync now. It takes about 10 to 15 seconds to resync all your data, re-update all of the numbers, all of the accounts, rerun all the calculations and everything, and you're completely set with your account.
Hey,
So
Fady, there was one question that came in. So does Clockwork work with the classes that QBO supports? Example, I have one GL for sales, but a class for each sale location.
Yes, so this will actually blow out based on how your QBO is blown out. So if you have different things under your kind of your parent accounts, it'll actually pull those in as well.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we do have a little over 10 minutes left, so want to really open up the Q&A and chat right now. So if anyone's got any questions from what they've seen in the presentation, for questions from Fady running his firm or about Clockwork, we do have some time to go ahead and answer those questions now. Sorry, Fady, was there any other things you wanted to show in the demo?
Nope. I hit stop share, but it didn't let me stop share.
Cool. And while we're kind of waiting for some questions to come in too, I do have a quick, could you make me the presenter quickly again, Fady?
Oh, yeah.
Or make host.
Only host. Does that help?
Don't see it there. Do you see the polling on your end? Or maybe just go ahead and hit launch that poll.
Okay.
Cool. So yeah, we do just have one question here. Want to make sure we can just follow up properly. So perhaps you're brand new to Practice Ignition, brand new to Clockwork. So just want to know, perhaps kind of interested in one of the solutions today, just so our teams know if you might be interested in getting started. So just go ahead and answer that quick question there, and they'll kind of really help us from both our teams. And yeah, any other questions? We do have a little bit more time here. If there won't be any questions in the next couple minutes, we'll maybe just shut it down early and give everyone some time back in their day. Fady, I think you did have one offer as well that you wanted to explain.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're actually running a promotion with Practice Ignition now. If anyone creates a Clockwork account by the end of the month, so this Sunday, we actually will give you 15% off your account right away. And for the Clockwork Champions program, the baseline is 15%, which only kicks in after 5 clients. We'll actually get rid of that and then get you started pretty much right away with all the benefits with an additional 15% discount. So kind of a pretty big savings.
Let's see.
And I guess one thing while the votes are kind of coming in, if anyone does want to reach out with me, obviously my information will be attached to all this information, and it doesn't have to be just about Clockwork. If you have any regular questions, any kind of generic questions about the firm, any of my experiences growing my own firm, how you can offer these services, how other firms are using this. We have, Reuben Brown, which is probably the largest firm using Clockwork. So we have some pretty significant accounting firms using Clockwork. And so if you would want to learn how people are making money off using Clockwork, because essentially we have companies that are upcharging their clients instead of just passing on the costs, because this saves about 5 hours a month. And so if you have any questions on that, I'd be more than happy to have that discussion regardless.
Cool. And then Fady, maybe just hit end that poll if that's still up.
Cool.
Great. Well, yeah, it doesn't seem like we're getting any other questions. As Fady said, questions for either of us, feel free to reach out. We will send through the recording, so perhaps you are tuning into this afterwards. And thanks for everyone for joining us, especially during this busy time of year. I know many of you are probably in the heart of a tax season, so we appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come on for today's webinar.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.